article and news reference, most people in the United States and, well, really anywhere outside of Canada are not familiar with the Idle No More movement that had begun in Canada last year, more in terms of a legal process or political process between the Aboriginal First Nation population and governance against the Harper government there, and it's now spreading to the United States. It's taking shape in the form of flash mobs, mainly in shopping malls, where there's I don't want to say powwow, but that's like the closest I can think of without being familiar with the proper terminology. But it's been a really amazing thing, and I believe a couple of days ago they did that at the Mall of America in the Minneapolis area. They are primarily interested in sovereignty recognition by the Canadian government and using this in order to have a say in what goes on with environmental protection. And I think this is a really critical movement to be aware of. That's really all that can be said about it. One thing that I do want to say, I haven't really harped on it for a long time because I've lived in Canada twice, and the first time was to obtain my master's degree in Vancouver at the University of British Columbia. Over a 15-month period, I did it about 20% faster than what is normal. And then again, I stayed in Montreal for 2 months this summer when I was working at a hostel and had something kind of like a residency where I was allowed to do tarot readings and be sort of like a... This makes it sound more glamorous than it was, but like an artist in residence almost. And in Quebec, it's a totally different experience living in Canada because they have not a socialist system, but a far more equitable approach to progressive taxation and getting women in the workplace by having $7 a day daycare in place. But as for the rest of Canada, and I think particularly Ontario and Western Canada, there is, by actual definition, a much more conservative mindset and, do you see the squirrels fighting and chasing each other? A much more conservative approach to things, and particularly under this administration that has been elected in 3 times. It's like Bush or Romney on steroids, really. Like total asset stripping, disregard for environmental protection, privatization of public institutions. I've gone through several phases where I've had different views on this, but privatization in theory and ethically sounds better, more efficient, and like it would be more functional. But usually what happens is you lose all control over things that belong to everybody. There is corruption when there are public sector institutions, it's true, but when it goes into a private enterprise, a lot of times it's harder to regulate what's going on. And in British Columbia in particular, what everyone was telling me was when I think the premier of the province was Gordon Campbell. I have to look him up again. he sold some of their rivers for like next to nothing in terms of the water and fishing rights. Also, BC Ferries used to have a very good, cheap, and sometimes free system for commuters. It was privatized, which reduced the amount of service that they had and made it very prohibitive for people to live in more remote locations, thus impoverishing a lot of the province. And Gordon Campbell, again I need to check his name, was later hired by the British government to basically do the asset stripping over there since he did such a good job in BC. So a lot of the reason I digress in that particular way is the perception in the States is that it's totally socialist up there, and for people who want that kind of political system, they tend to idealize what goes on up there, and it's just as bad or worse in some ways. They do have basic social health insurance, but everything else is kind of at a premium, and there are a lot of things I like about there, but we have to be cognizant of why this Idle No More movement is particularly taking off there and not here. Anyway, I advise you to look into that, and once again, thanks for watching. Bye.